Tom Brady says he's done with football. We're nowhere near done talking about Tom Brady. You've got my analyst, two-time Super Bowl champ Bryant McFadden, and Pete Prisco here. Pete, I'll start with you, and I'm going to twist this just a little bit. How do you think this all played out with our guy Jason La Canfora doing his job reporting on Friday and then getting to Tuesday morning with the social media announcement?
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with family. I think he was being tugged in that direction. We've said it all along, by his family and the want to be more active in the role of raising his kids and being home and being present. When you're quarterback in the NFL, I mean, you're 24/7 devoted to being a quarterback in the NFL. And I've heard legendary stories about him and Peyton Manning and all the greats. You know, they cast aside everything else to be a great quarterback. You take the film home, you sit in your room, you watch it endlessly. And so I think that's part of the reason I think he's retiring. And he pretty much said that. This is about getting on with his life and being more present in his family's life, which is something when you're an NFL quarterback you can't do. And look, could he still play? Absolutely. He had almost an MVP season this year, but you have to be 24/7 devoted to it. I think that's why he's stepping away.
Yeah, I agree with you, Pete. I think looking at Tom Brady's career over 2+ decades, you never question his love for the game, but also understanding and knowing as an individual that he would like to devote more time to his family. Clearly, the love is not as intense as it once was. And Tom Brady is a guy who's oftentimes have said, you know, the love for the game has driven him to places he never thought he could go. And that's why he's been so successful. And then when you factor in, yes, they're not competing for a championship, but you look at the year he had as an individual. With this being his last year, we would remember the last time we saw Tom Brady in the National Football League as a player that was playing at a high level. Some of the greatest players that we've seen leave the game over years past. You know, Peyton Manning, his last year, they won a championship, but it wasn't like the Peyton Manning that we saw throughout his career. Tom Brady, I'm right there with you, Pete. I agree. I believe he could play again and do numbers once again. But for him, yes, not winning a championship in his final year clearly was a disappointment. But the numbers he was able to provide for the organization, the MVP-like year, clearly is the best way for him to go out if he's not winning a championship.
B-Mac, I'll throw this one just for you. What was it like going up against Tom Brady and a Tom Brady-led team?
Very, very difficult. One thing about Tom Brady, I consider him to be the best leader I've seen in professional sports. The way he commanded the locker room, the way guys gravitated to him, his personality, and the way he led is something that I would never forget. But trying to prepare and execute and be successful against Tom Brady is like going against an individual that knows all the answers to the test. He knows what you're going to do. Funny story, when he signed on with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a good friend of mine and former teammate, Larry Foote, who's on the defensive staff of the Buccaneers, clearly they have Michigan ties. They were having conversations about some of our battles that we had between the Patriots during Tom Brady's time there when we all were there. Tom said he knew what we were doing in the coverage based on the tilt from Casey Hampton. Oh, by the way, was our nose guard. So he said he looked at the tilt of our nose guard to determine what we were playing in the secondary. How is that possible? But that tells you how much film study he put in to understand and know the tendency from our nose guard basically told him what we were playing in the secondary, something that we didn't know anything about, but that's how strategic he has been, and that's why he's considered the greatest to ever do it.
Pete, last word for you to give us some great perspective here. Tom Brady leaves after 22 seasons. What kind of bucket, what tier of shelf do you put him in? Is he the best player, best winner, best quarterback? What would that be?
He's the best quarterback of all time, and he's in the conversation as the greatest football player of all time. I mean, Jim Brown is in that conversation. Jerry Rice, who I think was head and shoulders above every other wide receiver who's ever played the game, is the greatest football player in my mind right now. But when you look at Tom Brady, he's in that conversation. He's in that conversation as the greatest athlete of all time, considering all the championships he won, along with guys like Bill Russell and guys who won all those titles and Michael Jordan. So he's in the conversation for both. But he's also in this conversation. The greatest draft miss of all time. You know, we talk about busts on the top and guys who flop, but what about the flip side of that? The New England Patriots drafted a cornerback 12 picks ahead of him. They got lucky. Let's be real about it. And I know Scott Pioli hates hearing that, but they didn't think that highly of him either. And all you have to do is go back to the Orange Bowl of 2000. In that game, Tom Brady brought his team back from 2 14-point deficits. He threw for over 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. How did the scouts miss? How did they allow this guy to get to New England in the 6th round? It's an amazing scouting story, one that you just, when you look at it, it's hard to believe that everybody in the NFL missed on Tom Brady.
It's funny you brought that up. We had Scott Pioli who admitted, I don't know if he's admitted it before, but he did with Jenny Dell, saying we didn't know what we had in him, and we saw the shot there that he was in the war room, and they passed him multiple times before finally get him in the very, very late round stages. Bryant McFadden, Pete Prisco, guys, thank you very much for joining us again. With Tom Brady retiring, did so on social media. The Patriots, who were noticeably omitted from the post, said it was quite a ride. Thank you and congratulations, Tom Brady on a boat, a duck boat.
Well, Tom Brady officially announcing the retirement, 22 seasons in the NFL, 7 Super Bowl championships.
Spent a lot of time in New England. How they feeling, you think, huh?
They're not happy.
Salty,
They're not
maybe?
happy. I'm getting a lot of
A little
messages
bit?
over here on the phone about why were we not put into this retirement announcement.
Great job by our crew, about an hour and a half plus of nonstop coverage on Tom Brady. The GOAT certainly deserves that. For Jenny Dell, I'm Tommy Tran. More coming up. If you missed anything more Tom Brady news, if you hadn't heard, he's retiring.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.